our next guest. He's in our virtual green room right now. Check out the name of his book, How My Heavenly Mother Saved Me from the Hellish Nuns. She was an artist, bon vivant, and devilish troublemaker. She distrusted politicians, clergy, and anyone wearing a robe, even on Halloween. And there is this little footer on the front of the book. It cracked me up. If you survived Catholic school, for heaven's sake, this book is for you. Jake Mcguire joins us here on Author's Corner as part of America Tonight with me, Kate Delaney. So let's talk about, first of all, your background, because you have such a fascinating background. Before we dig into the book, we have to tell people, look, you've written 15 books. A lot of them are really cool coffee table books. You've been part of successful launches. You've been a photographer. You work for the National Enquirer. Give us some little nuggets of your background.
Well, sure. I've been in journalism basically all my life. And I started off the Little Arlington News in Arlington, Virginia. And the way I got the job was I walked in and talked to the publisher, and he wasn't hiring anybody. I said, tell you what, I'll work free for 30 days. And if you like my work, you can hire me. If not, we can just part with friends. 30 days later, he says, you're on.
Wow. So that was pretty thrilling to start off that way, right?
Well, exactly, because a lot of people want to be a photographer at a newspaper or whatever. It's pretty competitive, but if you can talk your way in and offer something for free and it doesn't cost them anything, you're kind of a shoo-in.
Yeah, you are kind of a shoo-in. So one of the interesting things that happened, and I just briefly mentioned this, and we could do hours on this, but the National Enquirer, what happened there?
Well, it was many years ago. I was working with the Little Arlington News and saw an ad in Editor and Publisher, which goes to the newspaper business. It says the National Enquirer wants 6 photographers to travel the world. If you have a passport, send us 5 of your best pictures. I did, and they said you're hired. And I went down to this. So they were in Lantana, Florida at the time. They may still be there. And they sent me around the country. I had the flying saucer detail.
Did you ever see any flying saucers?
Well, no, I actually never saw a flying saucer, but you might know, Kate, that the credibility doesn't go on the newspaper, but it goes on the witnesses. So, for example, the Enquirer would never say UFO battle takes place over Mississippi, but rather they say dozens witness UFO battle over Mississippi. So, of course, when I went down to the Mississippi River, they all had a bottle of Jim Beam in one hand and I.W. Harper in the other, and of course they saw flying saucers.
We're going to dive into stories that are in the book, but I absolutely want all of you to stay tuned to find out how Jake's mother came back to visit him from the grave. I can't wait to hear that. Boy, in dealing with the nuns, there's so much in your book that just makes you, I think, laugh out loud. And one of the stories that you tell is about what was it like to be a left-hander, and what did the nuns do when they found out you were left-handed? What happened there?
Well, actually, some religions worldwide, they look at being a left-hander as a work of the devil, and that includes the Catholic Church for many years. If not, they may still do it. But anyways, I came home from first grade one day, and my knuckles on my left hand are bleeding. My mother said, what happened to you? I said, well, Sister Mary Margaret whacked me with a ruler a couple of times because I used my left hand. She was trying to make me right-handed. Of course, my mother dropped everything, ran to the convent, and gave the nuns hell. And so I stayed a left-hander.
Good for your mom. And you say that, I mean, that's in the title of your book. She was there. She just trusted, the clergy. You say that. It's the politicians, anyone wearing a robe, and even on Halloween. What was your mom like?
Well, she was very gracious and refined and very dignified, but she was an artist and had this wicked sense of humor. And actually, I learned my sort of ways of the world, not from my father, but from my mother. She, from when we were little kids, she taught us to play tricks on the neighbors and all kinds of fun stuff. For example, one year we had some neighbors, very fundamental neighbors for Halloween. They said their kids were only allowed to be, for Halloween, they could only be biblical characters. So what did my mother do? She dressed up my 2 sisters in the evil-looking black outfit and painted a cardboard box white and put me in it, and we went off to visit the neighbors to trick or treat. And guess what the little Mcguire children were? We were Sodom, Gomorrah, and a pillar of salt.
Oh, I bet that they got a lot of laughs out of that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, definitely a wicked sense of humor. Tell us some other stories from the book, because there's so many. We're not going to tell everyone everything. You can get the book on Amazon, but give us some more.
Sure. Yeah. Of course, the nuns are not all. I can't say all nuns are horrible, but the idea of the book is it's really a book devoted, dedicated to mothers and all the troubles mothers have, and raising the children and the difficulties and the dangers and so forth and so on. So it just has a sharp focus on the nun, and hence the title. But the not all nuns, of course, are wicked. Some are quite angelic. But yeah, these stories were they one little child in one of my classes, he wanted to go to the bathroom. The nuns wouldn't let him, so he peed in his pants, and I thought that was very mean.
Ooh, that is mean. The bathroom pass, the hall pass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think there's people that can relate to this. And Jake, I've talked about this. I'd mentioned this to you on the air that I went to Catholic school. And even at one point, I played the Virgin Mary, and I was in such a hot costume, I got sick. And, it was, that was it. So it was a fleeting moment for me, just probably 10 minutes to play the Virgin Mary, but it was exciting, right? So we have that in common about Catholic school. And that's why I like what you say on the cover. Like I said, if you survive Catholic school, for heaven's sake, this book is for you. So as you said, I mean, there are wonderful things that have happened, but there are so many funny things that happened as well. What was it that motivated you to write the book?
Well, my mother passed a number of years ago, and she was such a good part of my life and such a good influence on me. And I like to write. My first 6 or 7 coffee table books published since about 2004, or coffee table picture books. But then I like to write too, so I decided, well, I'll get into more writing. And so I wrote, the book is really dedicated to my mother. However, it's really dedicated to all mothers who, go through the hardship and dedication raising the children. So I think all mothers can identify with it. And that's why I'm promoting it as a Mother's Day gift. Everybody's got a mother, an aunt, or a grandmother, or somebody who's even a young person in the family is a new mother. And so it's a great gift for anybody who is in motherhood. And if they haven't been in motherhood for a long time, if they're a new mother, they can get some insight and wisdom to take it and run with it. Yeah,
it is a perfect Mother's Day gift. Absolutely. So another story that you talked about, and I think a lot of children can relate to this, or a lot of adults can relate to it too, is the story about the turtle. Tell us about that, because you live near a forest.
Yes, my mother always encouraged us to be kind to animals, of course. So I found a box turtle in our yard one day, and I thought, well, where can I put it that's safe? And I figured I better not put it in the refrigerator; it might freeze. So I put it under my mother's covers in her bed, and she had a comforter which is kind of lumpy, so it didn't quite show. And so when she went to bed, she tucked herself in, and about 30 seconds later, I heard this blood-curdling scream and a big thud on the floor. I think she dove off the bed head first. Because her turtle scratched her with those big scaly claws.
I would scream too. No doubt about it. All right, we want to tell everyone again that the book is How My Heavenly Mother Saved Me from the Hellish Nuns. She was an artist, bon vivant, and devilish troublemaker. She distrusted politicians, clergy, and anyone wearing a robe, even on Halloween. And again, that fabulous footer. If you survived Catholic school, for heaven's sake, this book is for you. And as Jake said, it's great for mothers, and it's a perfect time for this. And we're speaking with Jake Mcguire. Jake, I said this at the top, that we wanted to stay tuned for your mother and her return. What happened there?
Oh, yes. My mother, and when she's getting in her older years, I said, Mom, we're going to miss you when you're gone. She said, I'm not going to be gone. She says, I'm going to pay visits from the grave. And I said, yeah, Mom, right. So you know what my mother did? Every day when I came home from school or came home from work, she made a picture on the wall crooked. She said, that's when you know I've been there.
How many crooked pictures have you seen?
I don't live in an earthquake zone, but I have a lot of crooked pictures. She visits often. I hope you don't mind me mentioning, on my website, jakemcguire.com, I have some other books. For example, I recently did a book on Washington, D.C. It's called Washington, D.C., The Devil is in the Details. It's a play on words because of congressmen and senators and what have you, always arguing over terms. And so instead of a book of all the big monuments and memorials, it's a little architectural detail on bridges and buildings and monuments, that sort of thing. The Devil is Washington, D.C., The Devil is in the Details. That's up on Amazon too.
Great. And then also jakemcguire.com, because they can learn even more about you. And we got to leave them with this, because I teased it up a little bit. We talked about the National Enquirer, which is incredible, and some of the other things that you've done. You have to write a book about you, and I guess you're going to do that down the line, huh?
Well, I am. I'm actually about 3/4 through it. It's a book by memoirs, and interestingly, my memoirs can be any part of your life where if you have something is your whole life and you're gone. But anyways, memoirs. So I have these memoirs about living in 40 different countries where I either lived there or I had to flee before I got beheaded. It's called The Adventures of a Wayward Photographer.
I love it. All right, Jake Mcguire, thank you so much for coming on. Pick up his books. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, and good night, good day to your audience. Thank you for listening.
Visit www.greatwritersmedia.com. Email us at info@greatwritersmedia.com. Call us at 877-600-5469. Subscribe now.